we needs must look very carefully at the issue of purpose and decide whose purpose we are referring to when we explore the question of purpose itself. Are we referring to the purpose of the mind, the purpose of the body, the purpose of the soul, or the purpose of all three? Some people spend a great deal of their lives focused on the purpose of the mind. That is, what their mind thinks they should be doing. For a variety of reasons, by the way, the mind comes up with its ideas about that. The culture in which that mind has been raised, the environment in which that mind now finds itself, and the experiences that the mind has gathered and stored through the years. All of that creates the mind's context. The contextual field within which the mind considers its purpose. The body, as well, can equally have its own purpose. By the way, I don't want you to confuse the mind and the body such that you imagine that the mind thinks and the body does not. The body also has the ability to, could I use the vernacular, just generally, broadly speaking, to think. That is, it's not unintelligent. Your body is not unintelligent. It has the ability to gather data and reason about that data and respond to the data. Every man knows that there are parts of his body that has a mind of its own. And sometimes responds in ways that are not expected or actually wanted even. And so your mind and your body both have the ability to reason and respond to the reasoning that it has, or I should say in which it has engaged. Therefore, your mind and your body will both have agendas from time to time, short-term and long-term agendas from time to time. Your soul, likewise, may feel to you as if it has an agenda that is different from your body's agenda or your mind's agenda. That is almost always your mind at work, convincing you of that. But sometimes your mind thinks that it knows what your soul wants. And so then it will launch you on yet another pathway to a third kind of agenda, which it assumes to be the agenda of your soul. You need to be careful to place it into a context that is large enough to include the totality of you, that is, your body, mind, and soul. And I speak from experience in that regard because I did not do that until relatively recently in my life, the past 15 years or so, as opposed to the first 55 years. Most of my life, I set my agendas based on what I understood to be the agenda of my mind. During some of the years of my life and some of the periods of my life, I set my agenda based on what I understood to be the agenda of my body. That was particularly true between the ages of 15 and 25 or 30. And even for part of my life, I set my agenda based on what I understood to be the agenda of my soul. In all three cases, I was mistaken. I've learned, and since experiencing that series of misadventures, I have taken a close look at this business of purpose. What is our purpose? And more broadly, what is the purpose of all of life? Why is life even existing? What is its purpose, generically, for all living things? Now, many people go through their lives and don't even question that. I don't think that my father, frankly, ever did. Doesn't make him a bad person or unenlightened person particularly, but he simply didn't ask that question, to my awareness, nor did he act like a person who had closely explored that question. He just lived his life. He just got that it was what it was, and it wasn't what it wasn't, and he stepped into each day dealing with what was and what wasn't. But he rarely asked questions like why. Why this or why that, or how come, or what's the point, or what's the purpose. The result was that in my dad's case, when his body and mind's agenda was completed, that is, when he retired, his life was virtually over. He had to literally, God bless him, at the age of 65, find something to do with his life. And my mother, he retired even a little bit earlier. He had the ability to, where he worked, he got to retire. I think he was retired and cashed out around 62 or 63. He got his retirement plan and so forth. So, which is relatively young in life. Believe me, as a 70-year-old, I can tell you that was, I can't imagine what I would have done if I stopped my activity, my active years at 62 or 63. Gosh, that's like 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm still going strong, working sometimes 12, 14 hours a day or more. Well, I've done it here, right in front of you. She's looking like, wow, I did it right here yesterday. Arrived here at 8 o'clock and left at 9:30 at night. So it's not uncommon for me to work 18, 17, 15 hours a day. But I can't imagine at 61 or 62 or 63, that my poor dad, and my mom said he's like a tiger in a cage. He doesn't know what to do with himself. Your father doesn't know what to do with himself. He's walking around the house trying to figure out what to do with himself because he was no longer working. His life was his work. That was his purpose, was just to go to work and bring home the bacon. And his purpose was, his soul's purpose, or what he imagined his soul's purpose to be, was to, be a good guy and be a nice person, get back to heaven. He was a practicing Catholic. I didn't realize how deeply my father practiced his faith until I was visiting him one day in his elder years. And I was staying at the house, of course, and I happened to walk by his room, his bedroom, on the way to the bathroom down the hall. And the door to his room was just cracked a little bit wide, just a little bit. It was late at night. We were all retiring for the night. And so as I was going down the hall to do my evening bathroom, I happened to just glance. I wasn't even trying to look. I just happened to just glance that way as I walked by, and I saw the door open. And through the crack of the doorway, I saw my father on his knees, on his hands and knees, at his bed, with his elbows on his bed, praying like a 9-year-old child would. I saw that, and it was the innocence of it, the purity of it. I was so touched by that. I thought, oh gosh, God bless him. My 76-year-old father is on his knees praying to the God of his understanding. God bless him. And I realized that, what a pure at heart person he was, in the privacy of his own room, to have those moments. And he was, of course, not the first person, obviously, to have such moments. But I realized he was also, in that moment, serving the agenda of his soul. I'm very clear that my dad did certain things religiously and spiritually in order to stay inside the parameters of what he felt you needed to operate within in order to, get back to heaven. One was go to church every Sunday and, go to confession once a month and do the things that the Catholic Church asks you to do. And he did those things, till his dying day. And whatever brings you comfort, never take that from anybody. Brings you comfort, puts you in a good place, God love you. So I'm not making it wrong, just noticing that I found it not possible to serve that particular agenda because it just didn't feel real to me. That is, that I had to do certain things spiritually to get back to heaven or to stay in God's good graces. But I noticed at 53 or 54 years of age how many of the years of my life I had set as my agenda purposes that had nothing to do with the real purpose of the totality of me, to say nothing of the real purpose of life. And that's because I didn't know what the real purpose of life was, nor did I know what the real purpose of my own life was. I simply didn't know.